What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So last year, Sony talked a little bit about their new PlayStation VR headset, showing off the controllers, then saying, we'll see you guys next year. Well, it sounds like we could see a full reveal for this headset here pretty soon, based on a new report. We're going to talk about that one here today. Also, we are going to be going over this odd leak for Cyberpunk 2077 that started to make the rounds, so much so that CD Projekt Red actually responded to it. And we're also going to be going over this newly announced gaming platform that Samsung showed off at CES for their TVs. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty Vanguard came out a couple of months ago, and I don't really see a lot of people talking about it. It came and went. It just didn't really set the world on fire, and maybe that's just where we are with Call of Duty now, where there's Call of Duty Warzone, then there's another Call of Duty release, then there's an update for Warzone, then there's another release, and it just kind of has fallen into, for me anyway, the Madden of shooters. But it looks like a lot of people feel that way online, as well as former Call of Duty developers. You can see this tweet where Robert Bowling, who was the creative strategist at Infinity Ward for about 6 years, obviously working on several Call of Duty titles, saying, "It's time to build from the studs up. We need more than iteration. We need revitalization, a focus back on core gameplay and not content gateways. We used to treat our players like community and not consumers. We brought them into the fold for map feedback, not market feedback." I mean, yeah, I think Call of Duty itself could use a massive reboot. I just don't think Activision is going to do that while the game is making a stupid amount of money, because they've been able to inject all these microtransactions, ways to get you to spend money after the initial purchase with battle passes and all this stuff. I just don't think they're going to say, well, we got to change it all. It's still making a bunch of money, but maybe they'll surprise me. I'm just not expecting it. I think next year, business as usual, and then we'll go into the following year and they'll bring another Call of Duty Black Ops out, and yeah, that's kind of it. Honestly, it's unfortunate because Call of Duty used to be this big revolutionary series that when it released, it was a really big deal, and I just don't really get that feeling anymore from the series, but it's kind of been that way for a couple of years. Also, we are less than 2 months away from Elden Ring releasing, and I'm very excited. It seems like a lot of people are online, but there have been some interesting pieces of information coming out with, of course, direct comparisons to Demon Souls, and it's odd to hear about this from Miyazaki, even saying they had pressure put on them from that release. We can see this over on VGC, saying Miyazaki has said that Sony's PS5 remake of Demon Souls has put his team under extra pressure to improve the graphical fidelity of his upcoming game. Quote, "Yes, I'm pretty sure our graphics creation staff felt that pressure more than anyone else. And not just with Elden Ring, but with all the games we make. Graphical fidelity is not something we put as the top priority. What we ask for on the graphics side depends on the system and requirements of the game itself, and it takes less priority compared to the other elements of development." I think that's kind of across the board, though, in games now, is one studio is like a big AAA studio. We'll see another studio make a great looking game, and they're like, well, our next release has to look as good or better, and then they do the same thing, and that's kind of where we are now, where more about visuals than, well, frame rate or other parts of the game. But Elden Ring just looks ambitious overall for a Souls title. Demon Souls looks incredible, but like, it's not going to do things that Elden Ring is apparently going to do with this open world Souls game, but I'm sure we'll still get plenty of comparisons. However, the art style and some of the bosses that they've shown off look very interesting. So either way, I think Elden Ring is going to be a blast, and I'm excited to check it out at the end of February. Also, I've talked about that PlayStation 3 emulator, RPCS3, from time to time as advancements have been made, and there was a pretty cool one the other day. You can see this video. That's right. It appears that they now have the cross media bar working. So you can just boot this up on your PC in an emulator and go through the menu itself with all the different options. They're still working on different things, but this has taken them quite a while to get down, and you might be wondering why. Well, I mean, look at the cross-media bar. There's a lot of stuff that I'm sure can break and just go completely wrong. It's really cool, though, that we are getting basically to the point where you have an entire working PS3 in your PC. Obviously, for preservation's sake, that's great, but also for people who are starting to stand up servers and allow you to play some of these older PS3 titles online again. Really cool that you can just have a PS3 right there on your PC to play some of these classics that you have to kind of work around otherwise. I mean, Sony hasn't exactly done their own emulator on something like the PS5. Maybe someday, but for now, this is the one to pick up. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the new PlayStation VR headset. We're anticipating an announcement sometime this year after Sony showed it off a bit, went over some of the features and showed off the controllers, which look like they're a massive jump from what we had with the original PlayStation VR headset. There have been a lot of advancements made in the virtual reality space, so I expect Sony to show up with something pretty impressive for their newest headset that would work with the PlayStation 5. Well, it appears they could be making that announcement pretty soon. We can see this tweet from Brad Lynch saying Gore-Tex Chinese manufacturer will be in charge of mass producing Meta Cambria and PSVR 2 very soon. There was an entire report that was posted up by a supply chain analyst, and I'll leave a link to that down below. You will have to translate it through Google Translate to go through it, but there are a lot of interesting pieces of information in there, just overall for VR and other smart devices like Apple Watches and things. But the biggest thing is they do mention that there is a game console manufacturer who is starting up mass production of their latest virtual reality headset. And do you think it's Microsoft or Nintendo? No, it'd obviously be Sony. And when these things go into mass production, typically they leak online. And we've seen it with Nintendo with their Switch Lite. Remember the picture of the back of the Switch Lite shell and ended up being 100% correct? Or when we had leaks coming out leading up to the Switch's release, and there were exact measurements of the battery capacity, the weight of the Joy-Cons, specifications, all of this stuff. So most likely Sony is going to say, well, we should probably make the announcement before it leaks online. We saw pictures of the PS5 shell make its way out early. We saw the image of the person holding up the PS5 in the factory, and we realized, wow, this thing is an absolute tank. It's massive. So you get that into mass production, you might as well talk about it yourself before someone else does. Also, I think it makes sense to announce the PlayStation VR 2 headset ahead of something like Gran Turismo, because I believe they're going to have Gran Turismo have some sort of virtual reality integration with this new headset, considering Gran Turismo Sport had that. Like, you had an entire VR mode, and it's pretty clear they understand how to make that work, and I'm sure they could take the next step with the PSVR 2, which I expect some pretty big advancements over the original PlayStation VR headset just based on what other companies have been able to do. Obviously, the price is going to be a big factor here as well. So we'll see if Sony can come in with a decent enough price, but have plenty of good features and I would say higher specs overall compared to what's in the market. But then you look around and see $1,000 headsets. I don't think Sony wants to go that far with the PSVR 2. So that's where it's going to be an interesting struggle. What do they cut out? What do they leave in? And do they have any ways to go a bit further since they know what system it's going to be working for? Oh, one other thing to point out with the report, they did mention that a new Quest from Facebook or Meta is going into manufacturing, with the biggest point of it being to shrink it down even further. Remember, the all-in-one headsets are pretty popular, with the Quest 2 already crossing 10 million units sold. And I think the further they can shrink it and make it less cumbersome, the more interested people will be to approach something like the Quest 3 or whatever they want to call it and try it out. And a lot of people who try out VR kind of have that aha moment, or like, okay, I understand why people like enjoy VR. It's hard to explain it unless you do get a chance to try it out. So the better, I would say, they can make it fit into people's lives or just be less of an overall inconvenience, the more likely people will be to try it out on a whim. So we'll see how much smaller they can shrink it down. If they can get to a point where it's like putting on glasses, that I think is the moment where people will more or less jump in from a mainstream level. Next up, let's talk about this odd leak that started to make the rounds for Cyberpunk 2077. And from what I could tell looking through it, it was a combination of, I'm gonna say, I guess, new information or rumored information alongside of data mined information that was already kind of put out there, but then sort of put into this list. And it's from 4chan. And once I saw that, I said, okay, that very well could be someone making some things up, but then taking things that are already known and kind of just putting in this list and mixing stuff up. But it got to the point where CD Projekt Red actually responded to it, and I think it's because it was posted up over on Forbes, but we can go through the list here, and I guess we can look back on it and see how much of it ends up being correct. For example, we can see this Cyberpunk 2077 Next Gen Patch 1.5. It's going to be treated as a soft relaunch for the game. That's exactly what I expect them to do. In fact, I think they will rename it something else, like basically a subheading to go along with it. This says Cyberpunk 2077 Samurai Edition. That's probably a terrible idea. I don't know if I would call it that, but it's CD Projekt, you never know with them. And it does say that they will have a large live stream around February to reveal the patch. Sure, I could see them doing a live stream. That's not really an issue there. New features, barbershops, a garage, improved AI, transmog system, complete rebalancing of the loot system, new UI. I would expect the big next-gen patch to be pretty serious. Like, I expect them to change a lot about the game when it comes to quality of life. Of course, more bug fixes, because that just seems to be the theme of CD Projekt Red and Cyberpunk patches. To go on a bit further, though, free DLC would include 4 new weapons. I believe it's gonna be weapon packs, as is described here. New game plus, apartment customization, new gigs, sure, new content, all of that makes sense to me. But then things kind of go off the rails, and this is where I'm unsure how how correct this information is. They say that there is a spot that's gonna be introduced called the Combat Zone, which is being fought over by 2 new gangs, the Bozos, violent clown psychopaths with a sick sense of humor, and a gang called Slaughterhouse, violent psychopath fascists. Walking around the Combat Zone feels very inspired by the game Stalker. That's the part where I don't think it's correct. I think the other stuff is pretty close, especially with a soft launch with a new subheading. And it got to the point, like I said, where there was a response from CDPR Global PR Director, Radek Gabrowski, saying, this thing does not add up. Yeah, I would agree. I just think there are pieces of information that's correct from data mining, and other things that are just thrown in there as like, hey, just fun speculation, fictional stuff that they would like to see, and it just kind of reads like at least a plausible list. We'll keep an eye on this and see if it ends up being correct. However, I do believe they will at least start to talk about this new next-gen patch and new content here in the next month or two. February wouldn't surprise me. Next up, let's talk about Samsung at CES, where they've announced this gaming platform, this gaming portal for some of their new TVs in 2022. We can head over here to The Verge, where they detail it, saying features such as radio wave powered remote controls and support for NFTs. See, there's NFTs again. I told you guys, you'd be hearing about that a lot going into this year and probably into 2023, depending on things turn out there. They say also happen to be the first Samsung sets in a while to let you play AAA video games from the cloud instead of your Xbox, PlayStation, or PC. We had talked about this before with Microsoft and xCloud trying to get into TVs, even striking a deal with Samsung for some of their phones. But something gets a bit interesting here when it comes down to the selection of portals and streaming services that will be included. That is NVIDIA's GeForce Now, Google Stadia, and Utomic. So nothing about xCloud or game streaming from Microsoft with Game Pass, which surprised me a little bit there. But the service is going to be part of Samsung Gaming Hub, which is a user interface which Samsung's intending to expand to additional services as well. Now you might be thinking, oh, well, it's just the collection of streaming services and that's kind of it. But there is some other feature they at least attempted to describe, and we haven't seen it in use yet. And that has to do with you syncing your controller apparently to the TV. And if you want to play with your Xbox, play a game there, you can. Or if you want to use that Xbox controller to play Google Stadia or anything else, it'll just switch over to that immediately. You won't have to resync or do anything there. And I mean, it sounds convenient. I'm curious about things like input lag for some of your native devices, because you figured you would just sync up to your Xbox, your Switch, or your PlayStation, as opposed to syncing up through the TV and then going to the system through HDMI, I guess. But I guess if you're someone who maybe jumps from Stadia to the Switch or Stadia to the PlayStation, that is at least something that would save you some time when it comes to moving your controllers around. But yeah, it does seem that Samsung is starting to move in that direction with cloud gaming. Why not build more features into those smart TVs as we head into 2022? And then eventually, of course, have it across the board. I think most TV manufacturers are going to start doing something similar. Might not be as out there as what Samsung's doing where you sync a controller to your TV, but like, why wouldn't you have different things like Stadia, game streaming for Microsoft, GeForce Now built into your TV? So probably expect that to start to pop up more and more, and I would expect Sony to start to do that with some of their PlayStation Now and whatever this new services they're coming up with that's going to encapsulate PlayStation Plus and others. So we'll see if we get more announcements like this as we head through CES. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some new games that are heading to PlayStation Now as well as Amazon Prime Gaming. I don't really talk about Amazon Prime Gaming that much. However, the selection of games they've added in and the fact that there are a lot of people who have Amazon Prime, probably worth bringing it up here. But first, let's take a look at PlayStation Now. Put a nice little card up here to show off some of the bigger releases, and that does include Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age, Fury Unleashed, Kerbal Space Program Enhanced Edition, Mortal Kombat 11, Super Time Force Ultra, and Unturned. These are available starting today, January 4th. You can go on PlayStation Now, download them, play them natively, or of course, you can stream them. And this is something that we're going to see brought up more and more with that rumored, again, service from Sony that's going to try to mash all of this stuff together. And yeah, they're pretty good games being thrown in there, especially if you are already a subscriber for PlayStation Now. I don't know if I tell you to sign up like the PlayStation Now for something like Final Fantasy 12 or Mortal Kombat 11. I would say hold off until we hear more from Sony around their rumored service change they're going to be doing, but certainly worth checking out if you already have it. However, the other service surprised me a bit when I saw the selection of games. I'll admit, I don't necessarily look into Amazon Prime Gaming as often, and I probably should because I have Amazon Prime, and these are games that you can just download for your PC, similar to what we see with like Xbox Live games with Gold or PlayStation Plus. And take a look at the lineup here. We have Jedi Fallen Order. That is going to be through Origin, so keep that in mind. Total War Warhammer, World War Z Aftermath, Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy Remastered, WRC World Rally, Abandoned Ship, Paper Beast, that's the folded edition, In Other Waters, and 2 Point Hospital. Most of these games will be available to claim up until February 1st. A few of them go to February 7th, but I will keep an eye on Amazon Prime Gaming, especially if the selection of games are good going forward, because if you already have Amazon Prime, you might as well take advantage of that membership as much as possible. And if you get benefits like, hey, you can just go in there, click a button, and all of a sudden you have Jedi Fallen Order on your PC, why not? Even if you don't have a PC or gaming PC right now and you're thinking about building one in the future, you might as well claim it. And then when we get to a point where NVIDIA cards aren't thousands of dollars online, you can build a PC and then bam, you have a selection of games ready to go. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, with PSVR 2 and a new Quest headset reportedly set for reveal this year, are you going to pick one up? 51% said, no, I'm not interested in VR. However, all of the other answers were basically, I'm going to be picking one up. It'll be my first headset. Yes, but I already have a headset. The other one is, no, I'm happy with my current headset, telling me that it's about a 50-50 split between people who aren't interested in VR and people who are interested in VR. And that is a bit of a shift from when we ran the poll last year, where it was like, yeah, I think it was like 75-25. Like, there are a lot of people who just were not that interested in VR. I think there has been a bit of a turnaround, some of it having to do with the Quest 2 or just the Quest line in general that's like the all-in-one headset. Even seeing things like Resident Evil 4 go to VR. We hear about something like San Andreas Grand Theft Auto going to VR, and I just think people are starting to come around to the idea of it. And we see Sony gearing up for the PlayStation VR 2. That'll, of course, draw a ton of interest, so we'll see as we get towards that reveal what Sony has for us, but I do think we're getting closer and closer to the point where the mainstream will latch on to VR. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Tiger saying, with how they are typically used, NFTs sound like just another evolution of the speculator market. And as a former comic book fan, I know how much damage a speculator boom can have on an industry. Video game collectibles shouldn't be treated as investments, and you will only get burned if you do. The one good implementation is if whole digital games are NFTs so players can resell them just like used discs, but we know that won't happen since publishers hate used games already and won't implement a way for digital releases to be treated as such. That's the thing I don't understand is I don't think any of these publishers, any of these platform holders want to create a digital used market because it doesn't benefit them at all. They lose control if that happens. That'd be the one good thing that would come out of NFTs is you would get ownership over digital games to the point where you could trade an Xbox game, digital, for a PlayStation digital game. That's not something that I think Sony and Microsoft would ever come to terms over, but if we actually went face first into this NFT stuff, you could do that. I just don't think they want that, like any of these platform holders or publishers. They want the inflated prices for a lot of the digital products they would create and then just introduce to the market, but they don't want the consumer benefit that would come with NFTs. So I have a hard time believing that we will ever get to that point just because it doesn't benefit platform holders, publishers, people who would actually introduce the products. And ladies and gentlemen, that's good to hear for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was the PlayStation VR 2 that should be getting revealed here pretty soon. Are you interested in it? Let me know about that. And then also, what about Samsung and this new gaming platform for their TVs and Cyberpunk 2077? Do you think they can really revitalize this game with a new soft launch for next gen? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.